have down on record the views of, I think I can collectively say, all members, which are a massive thank you to all of our staff, our officers, who have led us over the last few weeks through what has been a very difficult time, a very challenging time for Warwickshire County Council, where we have had to be very fleet of foot and where we have had to make decisions pretty quickly. And the forbearance and tolerance of members at a time when they definitely want to be involved in helping their communities, and that engagement has been important. But key to all of this and the success of trying to help our residents out of what has been quite frightening has been the work that officers have done. And Monica, you and the directors have led a very good resilience forum, and I'd like on record our thanks to all of our staffs and to you in particular with the director team for your work in that.
Thank you very much, Izzy.
That's fine. So I will now move us into the cabinet papers. Says she. Yep. So firstly, can I take any apologies? I see none, and I will just add that Les Caborn is not with us at the moment. He's taking a call for me, and he will be joining us. The call is meant to be finishing at the same time as cabinet starts, but invariably these things can run on a bit. So he will join us as and when he can. I want to identify the chat facility, which if you scroll your bar, it brings up the chat box, which is the second icon from the right. I'd like you to use that for voting purposes and for asking questions. It would be very helpful to me in sharing this if you could put the agenda item at the beginning. So, for instance, the first agenda item will be 2. So if you are asking 2 question, I will try to bring you in. And if you are going to vote, can you put 2 agree, 2 disagree, 2 abstain? And then we have a record of your voting on that item. I hope that's clear. Portfolio holders will introduce the items as usual. Questions will be asked.
Could we ask everyone to mute their mics if they are not speaking, please?
I've got feedback. That's better. Thank you very much. They will finish the item and then they will themselves put forward the recommendations. If they are multiple recommendations, they will ask for it to be as printed. So with that done, I will then move on to item 2, item 1.2, which is disclosure of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Are there any? Les has just arrived, I will note. Richard has got interests. Is that an interest in? Richard, can I bring you in on that? No interest. Right. Moving then on to the minutes of the previous meeting. I am not intending to go through them page by page as I have done in the past, more to bring them to your attention for any matters that are incorrectly noted or any matters arising. And if you could speak now. No. Then can I ask for your agreement to the minutes? If you could record that, that would be very helpful. This is minutes. Thank you. That's coming up. I need everyone's points on that. Thank you. I'm then moving on to the first full agenda item, which is the complaints policy. And I would ask Councillor Camcor to speak to this one, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I trust you are all well and safe. I'm going to introduce the report around complaints policy. The policy is a key part of the customer feedback review and is supported by the new case management system in order to refresh our approach to learning from complaints. It will help us reduce failure demand and support and empower staff to deliver a consistent experience to our customers that is good as the best. I'm just going to forgive me because I'm a bit like yourselves trying to pull up reports in front of me. What it does do is it links in with our council plan, and if you remember, that was approved back in February. It also links in with the digital and technology strategy, our people strategy, and also our commercial strategy. And basically what this does is give a consistent approach for complaints right across the authority. You will see in the appendices, in the actual policy itself, you have a breakdown of high-level process, the timescales, and who does what. So basically the policy is actually giving clear guidance to both customer and also to our staff of how to approach complaints more consistently now than it has done before. The actual report is a comprehensive report, and I thank the officer for putting it together. It's a really helpful report, and I'm really pleased to be presenting it to you today. Izzy, I'm happy to take questions. I know Jerry would like to ask one, as you've said already, so I'll pause and wait for Jerry to ask the question.
Thank you, Cam. I'm going to take Jerry first, and then I'm going to bring Keith in, please. Jerry.
Thank you. Afternoon. Can I start by echoing your points, Izzy, reference to staff and the support of the organisation across the county and everything that's been done in the way of supporting, certainly getting the shielding hub up and the work that they've done and the work around PPE and those particular areas. So I echo that, and I think we've done so far a good job in Warwickshire compared to some other counties I've noticed. Turning to the complaints report, just a number of points really. I'm not going to rile against it. It's good to see a comprehensive document now which has come together. It's been some time in the making of bringing it forward. There's one area I know as a local councillor, from time to time I make complaints to the council about the organisation, and I just wonder whether actually there should be a little paragraph or something in an annex which references elected members to that, as well as customers and all the rest of it. I recognise the focus, but I know in the past, over the years, I have used the complaints process. And of course, if we're to record it and use that data for learning the rest of it, I think there's a question then also about what elected members are actually reporting into the system, because that's all data that can be captured to be used within that. So I'm just hoping that that could be picked up in the report. And the last point really was just around timescales, the 10 to 30 working days and things. When you look at it in bold, black and white, it looks what's going on here. And I just wonder whether there's some way of explaining that a bit better to customers and people who are coming into the process and utilising that. And the very last point would be it links to all these other strategies. And I'm presuming, and I'm looking at Izzy now, is that we will be reviewing the corporate plan and strategies in light of COVID-19. So I think there may have to be a rider just put onto this. There might have to be slight changes to systems and processes in light of those experiences. And that was it.
Jerry, thank you for that. Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Our corporate plan and indeed our budget will both need looking at a proper time after, whenever after is. Certainly as we move forward, I think that's that's given, really. I'm going to move to Keith Cam, and then I'll come back to you. At the moment, I don't think we've got anyone else. So, Keith, you'll be the last. Oh, and Richard.
My chat's not working for some reason. I've just sent a text through to Monica so she can put it on.
Richard, whilst you've got the microphone, can I bring you in first, and then Keith, I'm sorry, I'll bring you in next.
I've got, like I said, like Jerry, I mean, you read this and I can't understand what the changes are. But I think what would be useful is that each year we get a report on the amount of complaints we've got and what's happened to those particular complaints. Be interested to see if this makes a difference when it's reviewed, and give us the option to have another look at it, because I'm not quite sure when it says what it means when it says we're going to get proactive about complaints. That obviously, I think that means that as soon as a complaint comes in, we'll deal with it quicker than what we're doing now. So I'd be interested to know, not today, because it's what are we going to set a time limit for turning a complaint round?
Thank you, Richard. Moving on to Keith, please.
Thank you very much, and a massive thanks to all the staff who've kept us informed on the massive amount of stuff that's going on, because we get a lot of communication, and actually quite often us feeding stuff back to our residents direct may even stop some of the complaints when I think people have high expectations of the council and don't understand for things like opening household waste sites what there is behind it. So communication is really useful. I actually make a few complaints myself, and it's really good to have a clear complaints procedure. And I think one of the issues I find is people complain to me about the county council too early, if you know what I mean, rather than actually use the complaints procedure. So I think it might be useful to have a paragraph about the roles of councillors, and we're not the person who you initially complain to. If people want to copy us in or tell us what's going on, that's great. But I don't want to gather all the information and put it into a form and be in a paper chain. I actually want it to be done properly. So I think a few words of that. And I always think it's important that we actually say sorry for the things that go wrong. As a vast organisation, there will be 10 or 20% of complaints. The council's made a mistake, and I think it's quite useful that we are an organisation, and it comes out in what the paper says a bit, that actually does say sorry when we get things wrong. Because I know another organisation where they almost pride themselves on never letting a complaint get through. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, absolutely, very helpful. I will just say that I would always rather that we didn't go to a complaint process and try to sort it out either as an elected member with officers before we get to that. Once you get into a complaint process, there's very little role for a member in that. So I think it's always better to try to resolve issues first myself. Cam, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to Jerry's comments, if I may. So about elected members and complaints coming through elected members, I think that's absolutely right. It doesn't seem to be clear in the report about how we as councillors can put a complaint through on behalf of our residents. So definitely we'll take that one on board. In terms of the timescales, what the reason for the timescales, I think, and I think Kushal is possibly on this, or even Rob, is based on the Ombudsman timescales, and also the feedback that we had from our customers as well about how we wanted to engage and how quickly we needed to engage back with them. So first of all, this policy hasn't been put together in isolation. It's been put together by consultation with our staff, our customers, and also looking at reports and how other councils perform in complaint handling. So it's a whole raft of communication and understanding of how other people are using their complaints, documents and procedures. Richard, coming back to you on this will be reviewed annually. So it's a very much work in progress document and will be updated based on our based on what our complaints are like coming through, and it's very much about learning and understanding the types of complaints that are coming through, and through the new management system that we will have, we will start beginning to get a better understanding of the trends and better analysis of the types of complaints coming through, so that we as a workforce can become better and more equipped and have a better understanding of what our customer needs are. And that's really what this report's about. It's about understanding our customer and understanding what actually are the real needs of our customers. So I think we need to really understand that as the key point about bringing this forward. And lastly, before I do carry on, Richard, I believe the complaints procedures and complaints were discussed at one of the ONS meetings, and I'm sure we can schedule that in too. So again, to give you an update on how we're progressing in the review, possibly half term. So once the policies kicked off, we can review and let you know stats of how it was before and how it is working now. That's really easy to do. And Keith, I think I take on board your comments, and similarly to what Councillor Roodhouse has said, I think it's something we should look at in terms of complaints that are generated through councillors. So we'll definitely take that one on board. If there are no further questions, which I don't think there are, may I ask Cabinet to approve?
Just before you do, there's a couple of points. Jerry's made a point about timescales being clearer in perhaps graphic, which I think sounds sensible. And I know Monica's asked for a point to be these points to be made checked up on. That's fine. So Cam, back to you. Can you move the recommendations, please? You're muted. You're muted.
Apologies, I'm trying to look at the report and trying to. So I will move the report as set out, Chair, on item 1 of the report. If all Cabinet are agreed, please can you put it onto the chat box?
Yep. Right, I'm taking those agreements now. Please record them as we go. Thank you very much. I will move us then on to the next item, which is agenda item 3. This is the amalgamation of Ridgeway and Round Oak schools, and I'm inviting Councillor Colin Hayfield to bring this one forward.
Thank you, Leader. This is a paper brought about by the need to create capacity, in fact quite considerable capacity, for places for children with special educational needs in the Warwick area. And it is being done by suggesting that we combine together into one school, Round Oak Secondary. They're both within Warwick and just over a mile apart. Ridgeway does not have room to expand, Round Oak does, and in fact the local plan makes a provision for expansion at Round Oak. There has been a consultation exercise done, not a huge response, and it's been fairly mixed. Most people concerned about what the name of a new school might be, and that's something we will have to resolve later, I think. We've had recently, I think all Cabinet members have received a letter from Mr. Innes with his, and those have been taken into consideration.
Edmund, I think. Edmund.
No, his name is Edmund Innes. So we're taking that into consideration. I'm aware there's one or two councillors want to ask questions on this, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Colin. Yes, I've got Richard Chataway, Helen Adkins. If I can ask Richard first, then Helen.
The first thing I want to refer to is a letter which came into cabinet members and I was copied into. And like I said, that was to me, I haven't shared that because that was a confidential letter. It says private and confidential on it. What I really want from that particular letter, clearly the gentleman deserves a proper reply from the county on that. So I'd very much like to see a copy of the county's response highlighting what the issues are or talking about the issues are. I know Ellen will come in a second. The second point, which I'm concerned about, is, like you said, Colin, there was a parents' consultation on it, and it doesn't seem that was a large sample. What I'm concerned about is that, first of all, the assumption, this really ought to be in private session, this bit, the assumption that we will appoint the head. I firmly believe in this particular sector and all sectors that you should have an interview process, and I think that's in our personnel guidelines somewhere, so I'm not totally happy about that. I'm not totally happy about school governance arrangements within there, and like a lot of people in my group, we feel there should be a role for parents on every governing body, because after all, they're the customers on that. I think Helen's got one or two other points to make, but I will stress I'd like to see the reply from Mr. Innes. I'd like to see a proper interview process taking place, and I would also like to see some involvement in that, parents involved in the governing body and in the interim governing body.
Thank you, Richard. Can I invite Helen in, please?
Hi, thanks, Izzy. Some of my points do overlap Richard's, but I'll say them anyway. So just three things, really, if you could explain a bit more detail, Con, please. Initially, why was the IEB introduced to Round Oak? If you could explain a little bit more about that. Also, explain the consultation in relation to parents and staff. And also explain the process of appointing the head teacher. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. I have no other questioners on this item, Colin, so I'm going straight back to you.
Right, let's pick up on Richard's first. Yes, Mr. Innes gave a very lengthy emailed letter. I think we got it yesterday. It's a bit, its timing wasn't helpful, and I don't believe that he was one of the people who responded to the consultation. I could be wrong on that, but my information is that he wasn't. But he will get, notwithstanding what we might agree today, he will get a response to him. And I've seen a private response from the lead officer that deals with the three key points that he makes. The consultation, school consultations rarely generate huge numbers. I wouldn't say this is particularly low, but compared with many other consultations we do across the organisation, it does appear to be. The responses are mixed, and there was a smaller number listed in the appendices. Most of the excitement was over the school name, and I think we will have to have a look at what, notwithstanding an amalgamation agreement or not, we will have to look at what the name of the school might be. Now, the appointments of the head teacher, or the agreed 2.12 on the report, and I'm enormously grateful that I've got a paper copy of the report that I can refer to rather than flash between screens. But 2.12 of the report talks about how it was agreed, and I think that was by through the current officer team, I think, at the moment. But again, I will follow up on that and get a response back to you. I think that covers most of Helen's points. Oh, she asked about the IEB, Interim Executive Board. Again, that is mentioned in the report, and I think that is was principally down to the finances, the financial arrangements within Round Oak School that gave cause for concern. And an interim executive board was put in the governing body to oversee the necessary remedial actions required. I don't have particularly further detail on that, but again, if you want further detail on that, I can do. But it wasn't a reflection on the, as I understand it, on the performance of the school as a whole.
Helen's asked if she can come back on that.
And I do.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take one of you.
Helen.
Helen.
Thanks, Richard and Izzy. And thank you, Colin, for that reply. I don't mean this as a criticism, but I think some of those replies were a little bit vague, especially in relation to the appointment of the head teacher. So I personally feel quite strongly that this should not perhaps go through at the moment with the amount of sort of vagueness we've got on some of the issues. And that it doesn't, I don't mean that as a criticism, Colin.
Could I just come in here, please, Chair? Just to say that it's inappropriate to discuss the appointment of a head teacher and personal positions in a cabinet meeting. We can have, as the portfolio holder said, we will verify the appropriate process offline, but not in this arena.
Thank you for that. Can I say,
but that's the key part.
Helen, just one moment, please. Helen, I am happy to say to you that we will take this with you and Richard offline, and Jerry as well, who may have an interest, and we will discuss that, but we won't discuss it at this meeting in public at the moment. As Richard said, it's probably something that needs further discussion in a confidential. Colin and the director, can I require you please to take this forward to discuss with both Helen and Richard and other members who might want to be involved on that?
Yes, happily, Leader. I would say that recommendation 1.2 authorises the strategic director to take what steps necessary. So the detail of the name, the detail of staff appointments, I think will be part of those deliberations the strategic director will take. I think what we're principally here to do is recommendation 1, that we approve the amalgamation of the two schools. That's the key reason we're here today. The second recommendation is agreeing to hand over to the studio the process by which that take place. With respect to my colleagues, I would say that the concerns they have and that we will look at and will address form part of those matters that will be considered under 1.2.
Helen, I'm not going to bring this in for further discussions. I have got Mark Ryder has agreed that he will take this outside of the meeting with you, with Richard. The points raised are that we have a decision to make today on the amalgamation of these two schools. Those are the points that we are addressing today. The details of head teachers, names, all of that, I think we will discuss with you. I fully accept. And of course, indeed, the members responsible for those areas as well. Mark has agreed that will be arranged shortly after this meeting. I move, Colin, to you to resolve the recommendations. Jerry says this is fine with him.
Yes, Leader, I would move both recommendations as printed, please.
I'm taking now the votes, please, for agenda item 3, I think it is. Yes, agenda item 3, thank you. 1, 2, thank you, and I agree this myself, thank you. Just allowing those to come through, and I'm now moving us on, please, to agenda item 4, and I can I ask Jeff Morgan, please, to talk to the review of care leaver offer?
Thank you very much, Izzy. Good afternoon, everyone. This, the care leavers offer refers to young people leaving care in the age range 18 to 25. Changes in DfE legislation have meant that local authorities are now responsible for care leavers up to the age of 25 beyond 21, which was the previous situation. We are encouraged by the DfE to review the guidance and the offer that we have for care leavers periodically, and this is what we're doing. So everything that I'm going to talk to you about now is in addition to what we're already offering. The proposed changes are for eligible young people, and they represent an increase in sometimes cash grants and sometimes service provision. On page 1, items 1 to 6, you'll see the proposed changes, and they are, I won't go through them all, but you can see it's payment of council tax for those eligible up to 25, increase in the university bursary up to the age of 25, and that is an annual payment every year that a young person is at university. Winter fuel payments, counselling service, baby box, and grants for domestic items. The table on page 2 and 3 gives you a breakdown of the current and the anticipated costs in this area. Total cost we expect to be around 137,000. All of that will be dealt with within current budget limits. Appendix 1 gives you more detail on the support that we're currently offering to our care leavers, things like driving lessons, gym membership, grant mentoring scheme. And the second appendix is a rather weighty document, which is a care offer audit tool produced by local authorities by the National Care Leaving Benchmark Forum, with input from young people in that. If I could just bring this to my sort of introduction to an end and say that I'm very proud of our care leavers offer. I feel it stands comparison with any other local authority. When our young people, our young ambassadors, go to regional and national forums and describe what is available in Warwickshire, there is a lot of interest and a lot of envy. And so I'm very proud of this, and I think officers are doing a great job in this area. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff, too. I personally think it's a fantastic paper. I'm really pleased that you brought this forward. We have come a very long way from the very few of us who were at a meeting back in 2000, the early 2000s, when we had care leavers come to us, and we made a decision on the day that we would put something like I think it was 90,000. Richard will remember this, and Jerry indeed, and Sarah and a few others, £90,000 into a care leaver support line and helpline. This has moved on so far, it's unrecognisable. So I've got two questioners. One is firstly Keith, then Richard. Jerry is thumbs up, supportive, and probably remembering that that council meeting as well. Can I invite Keith, please?
Thank you. The first thing I always keep on saying is we always seem to focus on driving as being a life skill, and actually there's a lot of places where people may not ever want to drive. Yeah, if they're a computer programming student in Leamington Spa, driving won't be one of those life-changing things for them. So I think it's great we got the money there, but I think it's useful to make it broader to other life skills. And it's really good the people spending time and money with our help on sports and activity, the gym offer. looks very interesting, but it seems like 11,500 out of 13,500 is in other and alternatives. So maybe we got the title for it wrong. If people are doing boxing and judo and I assume tennis and all sorts of other diverse range of interests, I think it's quite useful to change the title to actually sort of funding physical activity and recreation, or and it'd be actually interesting to get a breakdown of how much is going into the different types of stuff. He says dance classes, boxing, judo, to see what activities people are doing. And finally on that, I think we do need to just watch people being given a gym membership for quite a bit of money and then not using it. So I think it is useful to do a bit of a tally to see how many of those are used. But generally very supportive. Thank you, Izzy.
Thank you, Keith. And then moving to Richard.
Yeah, I haven't got any real issues about what's on offer. The issues about is in 7.1, the financial implications, which seems to suggest that there could be a small risk to the budget due to the increase, which again is something I think we'll have to keep an eye on. And the other question is perhaps COVID related. Jeff, a note on this would be okay, is that people who are in the process of leaving care, they're leaving care probably at the worst possible time. And I'm just wondering, how are we supporting those people? I can remember seeing someone from Marina Wheeler, but I can't remember exactly what. So I think that is something we need to stress. Look, you're leaving care, but we're still here, we're still looking after you at this time. I think we were probably on the same hymn sheet.
Thanks, Richard. Andy Crump has made a comment that lorry drivers have been very pivotal in keeping the country going during the pandemic, and they've done an excellent job, which they have. I understand, and we do need to have drivers as well as those who don't. And certainly in my part of the world, if you were a looked after child leaving care, it would be enormously helpful to be able to do that. So we have a mixed an amount. Peter, I'm not entirely sure what you have said. Do you want to come in, Peter, on this?
Not only are we looking better as corporate parents, but we're looking quite good as corporate grandparents as well, by offering care to those who can't become parents while they're at age of care. But I look at this, and as Carl Jeff has pointed out, I think we're rightly proud of what we're on offer here, and giving these children from unfortunate situations every opportunity that a normal child would have out there. So I'm very proud of this offer. Thanks, and I'll leave it at that.
So Jeff, I'm going back to you then.
You've muted, Jeff.
I'm sorry. We have 26 care leavers who are at university. I thought you might like to know that. Keith, on cycling, I have some sympathy with you on this one. The thing is that what the kids really want is to be able to drive cars. And they get really, really excited and happy with the thought of driving lessons. But I'm sure we can introduce some flexibility into that. Also, as well, I like the idea of monitoring the usage of the gym activity to see what activities are being taken up and how effective it is. So I'll take that away. And Richard, we will certainly get a note out to you on how we are supporting care leavers in the time of COVID. Happy to do that. If there are no more questions, then I would ask my cabinet colleagues to accept the report and the recommendations, which are on page 1 of 5, and they are 1 to 6. And if I could ask you to approve them as read, please.
Thank you. I'm now taking votes on agenda item 4, which are coming in. Agree. 4. Okay. Which will move us then on once again to the next agenda item, which is item 5, parent carer support pathway. Jeff, this is you again. Thank you.
Gosh, this is hard work. I've got papers all over the place. Parent carer support pathway. In a nutshell, this is a change in the process by which parent carers of disabled children receive support. Any parent carer with a child with disabilities in Warwickshire has the right to a needs assessment, and these proposed changes replace the current parent carer assessment. So we're going from an assessment to a pathway. The current process is self-reporting really, and we've been using this for a number of years, and it's probably time to make changes and to broaden this out. What we want to do is to bring it into line much more with the process in adult social care pathways, and to make the whole process more qualitative and less ticky-boxy, box filling in. We've had a consultation with families involved with this, and their views are all taken into account when formulating the approach, and their views are summarised at extreme length in Appendix 3, which is on page 113. The current assessment is a form-based tick box process whereby only financial outcomes are allowed, and they are based on points scored. The new pathway should allow for a more structured well-being conversation, a more, dare I say it, holistic approach about families' needs with a qualified social worker. The current system is pretty baroque. There are up to 14 different steps that people have to take to get through, and the new pathway dramatically reduces that number and takes away the MASH as the front door, leaving the MASH to deal with more critical, urgent issues. The new pathway enables the support service to be tailored more to parent needs, and we're talking about approximately 200 families in Warwickshire who are currently in receipt of funds following an assessment. Page 97 gives you a diagrammatic representation of the proposed pathway. Just to finish now my little bit, no services are being taken away. The process is being improved, and it's becoming hopefully more person-centred. And that's all I'd like to say just at the moment. Happy to take questions.
Thanks a lot. That's great. I've got Sherry first, and then Les has asked to come in. So Sherry first.
Thanks, Izzy. Just about heard you because I think your mouthpiece is up on your head. What a learning curve. As Jeff said, it was quite interesting because I looked at all these papers on the Microsoft Pro, nicely provided, and I got my pencil out and did some annotations, some bookmarks and this, that and the other with the appendices, the rest of it. And then a few days later, an envelope drops through the door with all the cabinet papers, with all the appendices and all the consultation responses, which is fine, but perhaps we could drop all the consultation respondents, all that side of it, and just put a hyperlink in. So if we need to go and see those, we could. Basically, in principle, I'm supportive of what's proposed here, and Jeff's right in the sense of getting a proper pathway into operation and actually pull some of the weight away from the MASH and allow the MASH to concentrate on some of the work. A couple of areas I've got some bit of concern about would be one is around the digital divide, but also when they're going in and being signposted, and the website and the design of pages if we could actually do that in conjunction perhaps with some of the people we surveyed to make sure it's a friendly system with, if you like, the people out there that are going to be using it. So it's sort of testing it to make sure that it's done, and to do that on a regular basis with people out there, perhaps using the corporate parenting side of the business to help or whatever, I don't know, but there's just something about, we need to make that more friendly. I noted the lack of response from, where was it, North Warwickshire and Rugby, which is a bit of a shame, but then also in the responses it talked about on page 4 of the key messages back about the potential negative impacts on the neuro processes. I think there's probably quite a bit of work to do around actually getting over the hump in the sense of what's coming, which people don't want to accept, because there's clearly messages coming here. They've had a bad experience, which the last paragraph talks about, and think it's cultural change and going forward. And that's why I think actually the signposting and that offer and that discussion is quite crucial, and it's got to be really customer friendly. So perhaps we could involve some of the people in that and in that design, which would make it more friendly.
Thank you, Jerry. Microphone in the right place. It's hard having a cup of tea and talking. So moving on to Les, please.
Yes, thank you, Izzy. Can I fully support Jeff and what he said? I think this is a brilliant report. It echoes the See My Strengths approach we've taken in adults and moves that across children's, which I know we've been doing. It also will make transition easier, because one of my issues I have is that transition has always been difficult. I know Jeff supports the view from children to adults, and if we've got similar processes for life, and this is about life for some of the people we support, it will make transition easier and make, as we do, having got transition down where we start talking to families at 16, and my ambition is to get it down to 14, which I know we're working towards. One similar process that we use for life assessment, which this will give us, has got to be the right way, and as Jerry has mentioned, is part of the cultural change that we're moving forward. So thank you, Jeff. Great paper, fully support.
Thank you, Les. I have got no other speakers on this one, so I'm moving back to you, Jeff, to round off and for recommendations.
Thanks, Izzy. Thank you, Jerry. Some good points there. I'll go away and have a ponder on those. I might come back to you and talk one-to-one to see how we can incorporate some of those points into our process. I particularly like the idea of involving perhaps reluctant or skeptical users in the service design. I think that's probably covered everything now then. I'd like to invite my colleagues to support the recommendations, and I'm desperately looking for where they are.
Well, they're on page 91.
Yes.
And
thank you. Thank you, Izzy. Yes, the recommendations are as set out on page 91, 92, please, if you would agree to those.
So votes now taking place, and I'm just going to say 5 agreed. Thank you. I too agree. And just letting that happen, I think we are nearly there. So that moves us. We do have any other business, which I have to say, please forgive me, I've never noticed it in Cabinet before, and so just identifying it now, but I don't have any other business at this point. I am going to read the words about passing the following resolution about the confidential and exempt items, and whilst that is happening, I believe that we will be losing our public viewing facility. But can I just say thank you on behalf of all members of the council to those who have watched our cabinet, and I hope you found it interesting and informative and will come and visit us again. Thank you very much. So I'm moving to the exempt reports in paragraphs that members of the public be excluded from the meeting for the items mentioned below on the grounds that their presence would involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part